Welcome to the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby. Alphalist is a closed community with over 400 CTOs who share their knowledge and experience in a Slack space and at events. With this podcast, we want to give our members and interested parties insights into the thoughts and ideas of top CTOs. If you're interested in becoming a member of the community, please visit alphalist.com to find out more on how to apply. This podcast is proudly presented by Moss. Moss is the all-in-one solution for company expenses. With Moss, companies manage all expenses in one place from anywhere. The powerful Moss credit cards are ideal for high cloud costs. Moss offers card limits of up to €500,000 and payment terms of up to 60 days. This helps you to optimize your cash flow. Save time and money with Moss. Manage incoming invoices digitally and set your accounting on autopilot. All receipts are automatically pre-accounted. Your accounting data can be exported directly to Datev. This way, your month-end closing is done in just a few minutes. Additionally, you get 0.4% cashback on every payment. Stay on top of all expenses and use Moss free of charge for 2 months with the coupon code ALPHA. For more information, visit getmoss.com/alpha. Get moss.com/alpha. Welcome to the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby, and today I'm talking to Frédéric Rivain. Rivain, was that correctly pronounced?
Rivain.
Rivain, sorry. I'm like, my French is absolutely broken. And we're talking about online identity, authentication, and the broader privacy challenges behind like running a password manager, as you do. You run a company called Dashlane. I think you received around 200 million in funding, which is great for a European company from my perspective. And you're based in Paris right now. And behind you, I see bags, and you're packing bags. What is the plan behind that?
Yeah, no, exactly. So thank you, Tobias. Very happy to be here talking to you and sharing a bit of my Dashlane story. And we actually have offices in Paris, in France, and we were founded in France as a French company. Even though today we have offices in New York, in the US, and in Lisbon, in Portugal, and we are actually an American company as of today, because those we did 4 series of funding, all in the US. So we have US investors, and we are incorporated into Delaware as a traditional US startups are. And actually, I'm moving in 1 week. I'm moving to the US. I'm moving to New York with the whole family, the wife and my 3 daughters. So it's a big adventure and a lot of work to prepare the paperwork, the visa, the packing. And we're actually right now camping to a half-empty apartment because most of our stuff has already gone into a container on a boat.
That's exciting. Do your daughters already speak English or?
No, they don't. So it's going to be a bit of a shock when they start school in January after the holiday break. But it's also a great opportunity for them to learn. So it's going to be like being pushed into the swimming pool and okay, now you need to swim and and you need to learn English and get used to it.
So you're really leaving the comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. For the whole family, we are.
Okay. Yeah. Fingers crossed that it all works out well.
Thank you.
Can you maybe tell us a bit more about yourself? I mean, how you got into computing, your nerd path, in a way. How did you like get there?
Sure. Well, it's actually a pretty late nerd path because we didn't have a computer at home back in the days, and I really started discovering computers during my studies. Actually, that's when we had the first computer. I had the first computer. So, and I did engineering studies like general engineering, so mechanics and physics, and it was a bit of a broad curriculum. And I decided at the end for my final year of study to specialize into computer science. I went to Cambridge in the UK to do a diploma in computer science, which was a great experience. And that's how I went into computing. So I started my career at IBM. I had a scholarship from IBM for my studies. So I kind of owed them years. I did 4 years over there. And then I've been more like in various companies, usually end user oriented, content oriented. So I've been in video gaming, I've been in e-commerce, I've been in online gambling, and in the past 6 years I've been at Dashlane because actually I was using Dashlane as a tool personally since the beta. And when Dashlane reached out for me to join as their CTO, it was really a kind of an interesting idea to be able to join a company and contribute to a tool I was using every day, and I knew the potential and the adventure that was behind it.
Okay, interesting. From online gambling to managing passwords, that's that's quite a step. And why did you choose Dashlane over 1Password?
Well, actually, at the time, Dashlane was a French company. I wanted to use a French product to manage my passwords, so that's how I started using Dashlane. So that's just the history of it. There's no real more. And actually, I suppose I didn't even benchmark at the time. I just used Dashlane. I guess that if I had benchmarked, maybe I would have gone to 1Password, which has been created way before Dashlane and was probably more mature at the time. And hopefully we've been able to kind of catch up. And today, if I think about Dashlane and the competitive landscape with 1Password, LastPass, which is like the big ancient company, or people like Keeper, I hope we've been able to catch up, and there is not so much difference between 1Password and ourselves. And I really like what they're doing. We're doing our own ways of doing the same thing. So it's interesting to compare and to benchmark the two.
And what differentiates you? I mean, I'm a 1Password user for ages, to be honest. What would you get me with?
Yeah, it's more a question. I mean, at least between 1Password and ourselves, it's more a question of taste and colors and so on. So we do the user experience in a bit of a different way. We address the same issues in a bit of a different way in how is the user flow and so on. And then we all have our specifics. So we've been pushing a lot into things like dark web monitoring and automated password changer as a call to action when you've been breached and so on. 1Password, they've been more into B2B and enterprise world for longer than we've had, so that's more their current focus. And even though we're kind of doing the same nowadays as well, but and they've been like more strong in the Apple world. They've always had very strong ties with Apple on the macOS and iOS platform. We've been more not Android, but more like universal and not so strong in any of those platforms.
Didn't they recently, have a bit of a shitstorm because they decided to move to Electron away from native Mac development?
Yeah, that's a very complicated decision to take. I mean, at Dashlane, we decided to stop supporting native desktop platforms like Windows and pure native macOS in early 2020. And then we've been working on making that migration happen for our customers because, of course, most of them were using that and moving to a web standalone experience. We're actually going to finish that big migration and sunset early January, but that's a big choice for a company. But in today's world, it didn't make sense for us to keep maintaining pure Win32 apps or pure macOS apps when you're a password manager, everything happens in the browser. That's where you autofill, that's where you auto login, that's where everything is happening mostly. So we decided, okay, let's put all our effort into one single desktop platform, whether it's Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, and so on. And that's easier from a user experience standpoint because you now have that ping pong between the native app and the browser, and it's also easier for us in terms of effort and maintenance and so on.
So it's a pure web app then?
Yeah, today Dashlane. If you start Dashlane as a new user today, you are a pure web app. It's a pure extension. But browser extension is very close to a native app. It's just that it runs into the browser ecosystem and not in the OS ecosystem. But it's a rich type of web app, let's say.
Okay. There recently also has been like a lot of discussion around Google's power and the Manifest version 3.
Oh my God.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's a pain for every developer that has an extension, a browser extension, and that has a lot of functionality in an extension. That's a massive pain because they decided to really reinvent the architecture behind extensions, make it like in a sense closer to the what happens on mobile, where the OS has way more control and can kill the extension whenever they want. And so we're deep into that refactor of our extension to make it Manifest v3 compatible. We're having a lot of conversation with Google. There's even like a W3C community group that was started back in June to have those conversations with the browser manufacturers and with Google. But it's a very complicated story. You might have seen recently there was an article on the EFF website, Ghostery published an article as well about the fact that Manifest V3 is going to maybe not kill, but is going to impact very significantly the extension ecosystem. I don't know what will happen. I mean, we have to do it because we are guests on the Chrome ecosystem, the same way we are guests on the Android or on the iOS ecosystem. But I wish Google was a bit more open to taking the feedback from the community and making the rules more, at the end of the day, more adapted to each ecosystem. They're trying to like kind of merge the mobile and the desktop platforms, but I mean, there are different platforms that have different needs, and that's a complicated story and a lot of work for us.
Are they abusing their power on that end? Is that something one could say? I mean, I recently heard that, for example, ad blocking will be much harder with Manifest v3.
Yes.
And ad blocking is obviously not a thing that Google necessarily wants.
I mean, it's you could say they're abusing their power, but at the end of the day, it's their platform, their ecosystem. They decide. So I wish they would be more open to make it to make the ecosystem more open so that everybody can benefit from it. And but that's not really the case. They want to keep it controlled. They want to keep it restrained, and that creates a lot of constraints for third-party developers like us.
Okay. One thing that also entered the browser a while ago is actually that you see your face in the upper right area of Chrome. That they, like, in a way, are introducing identity at the very first level. Whenever you start the browser, you can select the profile you want to use. Is that in long term a problem for a password manager? I mean, I could imagine that they want to sell that identity at a certain time, that they want to, I don't know, build an app store, right? Like a real app store for the web, and make the web in a way the next app. Is that a challenge?
I mean, it's a challenge. Yes, in a way, Google with their Chrome Password Manager, or Apple with Keychain, they are competitors of what we do. In practice, it's always been the case. I mean, it's not Chrome Password Manager is not new, Keychain is not new. So, but I think those ecosystems they've come to the realization that there is a need for a broader ecosystem around identity and password management. So there's room for everybody in a sense. So I'm not saying, I don't know what the future will be, but today I feel that if you are using Chrome Password Manager, you're tied to the Chrome environment, and you can't really use it on iPhone. I mean, it's more complicated to use it on other platforms. So there is a need for people that want a more universal platform that is not tied to the big tech, and that has some level of digital independence as well. Because one thing that you can be for sure is that when you put your stuff in Chrome, Google has everything. They have the keys, they have everything. And then that's a choice around privacy and security. Do you trust the big tech to do the things right? But they have conflicting business interests as well. They're happy to provide you service for free, but the data that they get from it is also a way for them to monetize. So personally, and of course, I'm the CTO of a password manager, so I'm a bit biased in terms of how I think about privacy and security, but I've stopped using, and I used to have a Gmail account. I've stopped using Gmail as my main email a while ago, and now I'm using Fastmail, which I pay for, and that's an independent email provider. None of my daughters have Gmail account. I've created them a separate Gmail account for their emails and so on. So I'd rather pay and be more on the privacy side of things than trust the big tech. I think that's a very dangerous thing for the future for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, some big tech is also positioning towards privacy first, right? Apple is in a way spearheading that, but on the other hand, they are still
they are very strong marketing. Okay. That's just marketing of the privacy, and they try to do things right, but at the end of the day, yet again, their business is conflicting with the fact that they offer those type of services. So.
One question I have on my mind, is there actually a reason to have passwords still? I mean, 10 years from now, do we all need passwords? Or is the future rather like an Okta or something similar, where you just have like an authentication service and you have, I don't know, maybe a small piece of hardware that checks if you're real or something like that? Is that the future, or is password still, does it have a future?
I mean, we've been talking about passwordless for many, many years. And like 25 years ago, Bill Gates was already saying the password is dead. We're 25 years later, the password is still there. My personal opinion on this is that if you think about the password, at the end of the day, it's just a secret. It's a very simple secret. It's the same as Alibaba, and when he was saying Sesame, please open the door, or whatever. It's a very simple text secret, so it's very cheap to implement and it's very cheap to maintain and to use. In the same way, in the sense that if I think about the world of payment, we still have cash. You still have gold as the physical version of this, even though you have on top of it credit cards, online payments, cryptocurrencies nowadays, and so on. So my thinking is that something similar is going to happen with the identity world. You're still going to have that secret as a key, a secret key, and that's going to be a string of text. But on top of it, you add biometrics because it's more convenient. You will add hardware to make it more convenient. You're going to add additional layers on top of it to hide the complexity and the user experience from the password, but I think it's going to remain there. And in that same sense, at Dashlane, we support biometrics, so you can use your Touch ID or Face ID or whatever on top of your master password. You can use, I have a security key, a hardware security key that I'm using instead of my master password. So we're adding on top of it additional layers to make it more convenient, more user-friendly. But I think the primitive, the identity primitive, is going to remain a piece of text that only you can know. Because yet again, if I think about biometrics, it's very convenient. But if your biometric data is stolen, it's not like you're going to be able to change your face or change your fingerprints. So it's not really for security. It's more for convenience. In the same way, if you have a security key, it's fine. But if it's lost or if you get it stolen, what do you do?
Yeah, well, it's just another factor, right? But these days, I mean, as mentioned, I'm using one password. I would feel a bit better if I had another factor in it. I mean, it's you authenticate with password, and that's it. I want to use my face or my fingerprint, and right now I can't. Can I do it with Dashlane or?
No, you can. But you're right. Having multi-factor authentication is super important because the problem in a sense is that the password is very simple. But so it's also very simple to hack and to breach. So and there are so many data breaches out there that your password is not enough for you to be protected today. So having the password as a secret that you know is one step, but you need additional factors to make sure that if one of them gets corrupted or gets stolen, you're not at risk. And that's why more and more websites are supporting different flavors of 2FA. And at Dashlane, we support you with the 2FA. So for instance, if you have your GitHub account stored in Dashlane, if you have your GitHub password, you have your GitHub 2FA stored there as well. You can leverage biometrics on top of it and so on. The main difficulty from a technical standpoint is that there is not really yet again a web standard or web protocol for identity. It was really not part of the foundations of the internet. So things like the FIDO Alliance, they're trying to standardize the protocols around two-factor authentication. The W3C is trying to standardize the protocols around identity. There is things like WebAuthn that was created recently, but it's still a very fragmented world where everybody's doing it's a bit of the wild, wild west. Everybody's doing what they want. And you mentioned also things like Okta. In the consumer world, you have Facebook Connect, you have the login with Google. But yet again, we've seen in early October when Facebook went down, the impact on the web because nobody could log in anymore because Facebook Connect was down. So yeah, it's a very fragmented world.
I would also rather not trust Facebook to authenticate me.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you solve that biometric topic then? I mean, you mentioned all the standards like WebAuthn and FIDO2 and so on. Like I can use a biometric factor in your tool, even if it's web-based, to authenticate with GitHub?
No, it depends if GitHub supports it. But yes, for instance, GitHub supports WebAuthn today, so you can use all the two-factor protocols that are behind WebAuthn, which is security keys, biometrics, and so on. But that's because GitHub, the website, decided to support WebAuthn. And the problem today is that because there is no real standard and there is all the long tail of all the websites out there in the world, and it's not like it's part of HTML or JavaScript as a de facto standard. So not all the websites are supporting those protocols today.
But if the website doesn't support it, can't you support it? So that I don't know, whenever I authenticate with Dashlane and use my account somewhere, I have to use another factor?
So what we can do is we can hide the fact that we are autofilling your password in the website through the biometrics. So instead of you visibly seeing it, we'll just see like, okay, I'm just using my Face ID and that's logging me in. But behind the scene, we're going back to the password because that's what the site supports, and we are autofilling the login and password directly in the login form.
Yeah,
it's not like direct use of biometrics.
I'm just asking because a lot of people actually store the second factor in a tool like Dashlane or 1Password and just use a password to authenticate, and like with a password manager, and that in a way feels broken, right?
In practice, the use of the password manager today is to host all your identity as a whole, whether it's passwords, biometric, it's 2FA factors, it's payments. In Dashlane, you can host your payments, you can host your IDs and so on, and to make your life when you're browsing as seamless as possible. That's kind of the end goal, like a simple and security life online. And so whatever we can do to facilitate the user flow. So I'm on the e-commerce website. I'm going to be auto-logged in automatically, no matter what the website supports in terms of authentication mechanism. And then I purchase stuff. I get on the checkout page. Same thing. We're going to autofill your credit card automatically. You can decide to have a confirmation through a two-factor, whether it's your Face ID or your fingerprint or whatever. And that's, that's our purpose. Our purpose is to make your online life simpler and still secure.
Okay, but let's imagine you're now like a CTO of an online bank, and you have to provide all your team members a B2B good service for passwords, be it Dashlane, be it 1Password, be it another service. How would you like recommend or enforce like proper policies? What would be the policy you would recommend? Is there any second factor to log into 1Password or to Dashlane, or what is how would you enforce security?
You know what? Especially in those type of tools, the problem is not enforcing. The problem is adoption. You need the employees to actually use the tool to make it efficient. And all the password managers and all those security tools that are about securing the employee, securing the human person in the work environment, they're all really about adoption. So it's in a sense more important to make sure that you have the cool user experience, that you make it easy for the employee or for the person in the enterprise to want to use the tool because it's convenient, because they can use it at home and at work and that type of stuff, rather than try to enforce, okay, it needs to be 9-character long passwords and you have to use a 2FA and so on. So of course you need to do also those things, but if you enforce policies and they're not used by the employees, then you don't achieve your goal, which is to secure the organization. So it's really the main challenge for tools like 1Password or ourselves is really adoption by the employee. So how do we make it as easy as possible to deploy for the admins, as easy to use as possible for the employee to onboard and so on. And by the way, that's also why most password managers nowadays, when you have a B2B offering, in that you can also use a Dashlane, for instance, at home and at work, and it's offered by the organization, but you can still use it at home. In Dashlane business license, you have a family plan as well, so you can also use Dashlane for your family, because we know that's also a risk factor, and so on and so on.
That's actually a nice thing. So I'm still paying for 1Password at home to share passwords with my girlfriend. So maybe it's a good reason to move over to Dashlane then.
Yeah, you should buy a Dashlane license for OMR for all the employees, and then you can have it at home, at work, and for the rest of the family.
Yeah. But one step back, what would be your recommendation then for the bank that the bank recommends using a second factor for Dashlane then, besides a password, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I think about this identity authentication security in a company, for me, there are like two things. There is the critical services for the company, and those they need to be under SSO and controlled by the admin and very tightly secured with a two-factor and so on. And then you have all the other services that are not the critical ones. I don't know, like the Twitter account from the marketing team, the access to that CRM tool that is being used by by the community managers and so on. And all of those ones, you're not going to plug all of them behind the SSO, or you might not even be able to. That's where you need a password manager to do the full coverage of your authentication. And then there's a side part of it, which is you shouldn't underestimate, which is whatever people are doing at home, because they are going to reuse passwords from home to work and so on. And that's where also the password manager needs to encompass the full spectrum of the authentication for the employee. So I see us more as a complementary tool between enterprise SSO and for the employees.
Okay, understood. This podcast is proudly presented by Viad. Viad IT Consulting is looking for new employees. What can potential candidates expect? Innovative projects, appreciative colleagues who grew up with the internet just like you and share many nerdy memories. Today, we work in teams of the digital future of regional companies. For more information, visit viad.de. That's viadee.de/en/career. And I think that one of your key challenges then is keeping your tool secure, right? I mean, keeping all the data secure, running potentially. I don't know how do you do it? Do you work with HackerOne, or how do you keep your tool safe and secure?
We do actually work with HackerOne, but at the end of the day, it's about common sense. Security is a lot of common sense and a very simple principle. In our case, it's what we call zero knowledge architecture. So the way we've built Dashlane is based on the fact that nobody can access the data, the user data, except the user themselves. And the way we do it is that everything happens locally on the customer device. Encryption of the data is done locally with the master password that only the customer knows. So we have nothing on our servers that can be really hacked because we don't have the keys and we can't decrypt the data. So of course, the encrypted data comes to our server and so that it can be replicated, synced and backed up for the customer convenience. But we don't have the keys, so we can never access the data. If we get a subpoena, we couldn't even give the data because we don't have it. So that's a very simple concept. But of course, it has a lot of implication in how we implement it, and the technical implementation of it is pretty complex. But it has ensured that so far we've never been hacked. We've never had public breaches or data leaks or that type of stuff. So cross fingers.
But if someone is able to install a keylogger on a Mac, then things would be broken, right?
Yeah, I mean, the compromission of the device is game over no matter what. So if you have on your device, if you have a malware, a Trojan, a keylogger, they can read the memory, they can see what you're typing. So at this point, your device is compromised. It's a game over. And we've had a lot of conversation, by the way, on that topic with Microsoft and with Apple about the fact that there should be more OS level protection around device compromission. So like more things like protected memory, obfuscation, automated obfuscation in memory and so on. Because we've been adding like countermeasures against those type of attacks, but there's so much we can do at the end of the day. Like I said, if they can see you typing and when you type your master password, then that's game over. So
it's actually interesting to see that there's like a full world around devices, USB devices that can actually do keylogging for you and pretend to be a keyboard and stuff like that. And that's yet like not really solved, right? Like OS level seems to be like quite easy to hack.
Exactly. If I think about the attack vectors against Dashlane, there are like 5 of them. So we mentioned one, which is device compromission. Of course, the main one is application compromission, or if you have bugs or vulnerabilities that are exploited by hackers. And so that's the one we work a lot to and we use HackerOne as a bug bounty for this one. Then there are 3 others. One would be what if a hacker attacks our servers on AWS? We're on AWS. They could get access to the backend for Dashlane. In practice, I don't think this is a really efficient one because yet again, you would get access to millions and millions of small encrypted files, which are the encrypted files for all the transactions that from Dashlane customers. But each of them is encrypted with different key, and you don't have the key. So then I'm not saying you couldn't brute force individually each one of them, but then you would need a massive amount of CPU or GPU and so on. Attack vector number 4 is hacking Dashlane internal IT systems. And actually, the main scenario here would be, okay, I'm in the Dashlane IT system and I'm trying to pass as a developer and put malicious code inside the Dashlane CI, like the supply chain tack. So this one is one that keeps me awake at night. And so we're also working a lot to make sure it doesn't happen. And then the final attack vector is actually the human factor. What if someone would bribe or threaten or corrupt a Dashlane employee? Most probably a Dashlane developer. And that developer would plant malicious code or backdoor into the Dashlane application. So that's one we worked hard also to prevent. And not that we don't trust our employees, but who knows what can happen.
Yeah, so the biggest problem is in between the headphones, typically, right? I mean, also in the world of hacking and security, social engineering is kind of the biggest threat to companies out there, right? I mean,
exactly.
Imagine yourself, I don't know, wearing like a blue suit, like someone coming from, I don't know, a network engineering company or something, and just like ringing the bell at the door and just, asking people if they can enter your data room or your hardware room. It will
on that front, it will
there's
so much
out,
you can
right?
do against that. So so you need to train your people, you need to educate them, you need to make sure, like, even things like phishing and so on. We need to make sure that they're aware about the risks about phishing, that they're very used to reporting phishing campaigns, and additionally, we do a lot of work around that education of the employee to make sure that they know the risks, they know the security vectors, they know about social engineering, they know about all that stuff, and they are more cautious. And of course, we are a security company, so that's also a part of our DNA. But it's still hard even for us.
Okay, one thing I still have on my mind. So you stepping back to privacy and security, and maybe owning your own data. Wouldn't it be a nice thing? So Google recently came up with the topic of the privacy sandbox. I mean, if someone comes up with a privacy sandbox, I personally would prefer other companies than Google, like just as a user. Is that something that could be offered by companies like Dashlane, that you really have that layer between the website and the end user, and really giving the user the choice which data leaves the room and where it floats?
Yet again, that privacy sandbox is more of a marketing thing than anything else. It's always the same concept. It's okay. You put things in a box, and the only one who has the key to the box is you. So that's a zero knowledge type of architecture. That's what we do. Dashlane is a kind of a privacy sandbox in that sense. You put things in Dashlane, and you're only one who has the keys to that vault. We don't have it. It's not transmitted. It's not stored anywhere. And so that's the main principle, and that's what Google is trying to replicate in their ecosystem. Then once we are there, then you decide what level of convenience or additional convenience you want on top of it, because the problem is that if you're the only one with the key, the only one in the box, there's so much you can do. So that's why we at Dashlane, we offer the fact, that closed box, you can send it to us so that we store it and we back it up for you. So if you install a new phone, we provide it back. It's still the closed box, so you need to still have the key. But that's more convenient for you rather than having to store yourself, put it on a USB stick and try to put it back on your phone and so on. So that's convenience versus security, and that's always the compromise that you need to find. The one big thing to keep in mind is that if you lose the key, well, we have the closed box, but we don't have the key, so you're screwed. So you need to start over and start with a new box if you lose the key.
But also, like, I'm from the advertising world, and there are like in edtech, there's been like a lot of discussion around data and cookies and so on. Wouldn't it be a nice offering from yourself, like Dashlane, companies like Dashlane, to actually offer that box for that world as well, so that you actually ask the user, okay, which information do you want to give to, I don't know, Zalando or Amazon whenever they ask for it, so that you really know when the data floats. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. kind of the side issue of it is that those websites or those online providers, they need to support a way for us to be able to control that really, because today you don't, I mean, if you go on Amazon.com, you don't really have a choice. You need to put your login, you need to put your stuff, you even need to put your credit card in there to pay. And actually Amazon by default stores it, and they don't really give you the choice not to store it. So we need a trigger, I suppose, in the market where those online providers, because of customer trends, because of regulations, they've decided that the risk for them to store that data is too high, and they want to use third parties, or they want to have a different balance between what they store and what they need to operate their business. And today the balance is very much, and we try to aggregate as much data as we can, because then we're more powerful. So that's a balance of power that is too much in balance today.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's also the right to be forgotten in the GDPR. I think it's something really hard to implement, right? If you, let's take Facebook, if you use Facebook Connect, then like I'm as a company using Facebook Connect would rather try storing the data than throwing it away.
Yeah.
How can Facebook ever enforce the right to be forgotten? I think not really, right?
No, not really. But I mean, implementing a zero knowledge approach to everything is possible. We do it. There are other services that do it. Like for instance, most backup services. I'm thinking about Backblaze that I use as a consumer to back up my personal computer. They offer you the ability to generate your own key and store your data with your own key. And so it's more complicated. It takes more effort, but it's more privacy sandbox than just giving away everything to Facebook and so on. So it's a question of choice from those providers. And even though GDPR has been complicated for everybody, I think it goes into the right direction of trying to rebalance things a bit. Making sure that the power or the control comes back a bit more to the consumer instead of being in the hands of the big techs and the ad tech and everybody else.
We still want to talk a bit about tech and agile processes. How does your stack look like? I mean, you already mentioned AWS. You obviously have a lot of JavaScript for browser extensions and so on. You're getting rid of all the Windows and Mac stuff, obviously. What is left?
Yeah, so on the client application side, we have an iOS app which is in Swift. We have an Android app in Kotlin, obviously. Our browser extension are in React, very traditionally, and they leverage the extension APIs, and we've talked about Manifest v3 and so on. So that's pretty traditional. And our backend is pretty traditional as well. It's actually Node.js, TypeScript, and AWS for the cloud provider. And that's kind of it. And by the way, something that's interesting to think about when you think about the architecture for a pattern manager is because so much is done locally on the device. We are a very heavy client side type of application, and there's not so much on the server side. So we do have a server side to do a synchronization of data, to register a new account and so on. But we have the specifics of if our backend has downtime, it's not the end of the world for us. Our customers can still use Dashlane locally on the device. Things will get buffered, and then things will restart when we start again. So that's an interesting setup.
Does that mean you use something like CouchDB for storing the data because it's so good in synchronization?
No, we don't actually. We use on the backend side. I mean, first the data is the Vault data is pure file system. It's an S3, and that's our own format, and it's stored on S3 encrypted. And then from a database standpoint, we use RDS. We use like a very traditional SQL type of database. But yet again, the Dashlane database, in a sense, is pretty limited. There's not much in there. There's your email, because you have an email as a login to create your account on Dashlane, and there's a few information, but it's comparatively very small, and that's which is good for us from a GDPR standpoint, because we have very limited PII, and we're by default very compliant in a sense.
Oh, okay. And how do your teams look like? I think you had to restructure a bit every once in a while because you were getting rid of a certain client or a certain technology. How many people do you have working on tech, and how do you organize them?
Today, the engineering team at Dashlane is about 120 people. And so we have three main sub-department division in a sense. We have software engineering. We have what we call engineering operations, which is release management, QA and test automation, and project management. And then we have IT and security, everything related to security and internal IT. So that's kind of the makeup of the team. We're distributed. We're pretty distributed nowadays. We have people, of course, in France, in Portugal, and in the US. We're trying not to go too west yet because then of the time zone difference becomes too big. But still, we have people in Colorado down to La Réunion, which is actually a small island, which is part of France, but it's in the Indian Ocean. So like the spread of the people that we have. And then from the more of a product engineering, like product team, we have in time iterated a lot on our organization, how to work best within product engineering to deliver for our customers and for our business. The current iteration is that we have three typologies of team. We have what we call the platform squads, which is like that then means is a platform type of teams that are in charge of supporting the ecosystem. So we have an Android platform. They make sure that whenever there's a new Android version that comes out, Dashlane is compatible. They manage the tooling and the release infrastructure for all the other Android developers. So we have platform squads as a type of team number one. We have what we call the core teams. They're called the core teams because they run the core features of Dashlane. So we split the feature set of Dashlane, and those are our main feature teams. And then finally, we have a few what we call mission teams, and those are teams that are more temporary, that we're going to spawn for a specific goal or a specific project. And for instance, at the moment, we have spawned a mission team around MV3 compatibility. So we have a special effort around being MV3 compatible for our extension. And once that's done, well, we'll dissolve the team, and people in the team will go back to do something else.
Okay. And is the team, or like especially that manifest free team, for example, is that only specialists and only technical people, or is there, I don't know, a product manager in the team as well, or like how is that arranged?
Yeah, for mission teams, we staff the mission team with whatever they need in terms of skills. So in the context of that specific MV3 mission team, it's really web oriented. So we have web engineers we only have web engineers, but we do have a product manager attached to the team because there is going to be a adaptation in the UX due to Manifest v3. So we need to think about, what do we change in terms of user flow? And we, at some point, will probably need a bit of design help as well in the team. And we have someone from the project management team also helping the team and supporting the team, coaching them from an agile practices standpoint. So yeah, we staff as needed. And then that means we have a pretty continuous staffing mechanism where, depending on the needs of that mission team or that core team or that platform squad, we are going to evolve whenever there's a newcomer, someone leaving, someone who wants to change teams. That's a big part of the manager role to adapt the staffing kind of in real time, depending on the needs of the business.
And the business is also part of that team, or is the business separate, the business org?
No, we do have a representative of the business for each team. So we have a product marketing representative, we have a sales representative, and so those people are not full time in the team because they have other stuff to do. But we have contact points, and they take part into like the definition of the roadmap, and they provide feedback on the initiatives and the tests and the projects that we do, and so on. And we have the same, by the way. We also have a customer support representative for each team, and an data analytics representative to help the team around all the data needs and so on.
Okay, interesting. And like on high level goals, how do you set high level goals? Like when do you say, okay, let's form a team around that? How does that happen? And also company goals. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, it's pretty classic. So we have a North Star strategy, which is kind of a 3-year strategy that we define as the main vision for what we're going to do like in the next 3 years. And then we have we take this and we split it in yearly chunks. So for instance, right now we are finalizing the definition of the 2022 company strategy. And around that company strategy, there is of course a budget, a 2022 budget that needs to be approved by our board. There is an engineering strategy, what is going to be the main initiatives on the technical side to support the strategy. And there's a product roadmap attached to it. And there are also company OKRs for the year. And then that packages the company strategy for 2022, and then cascades into all the teams and in all the departments at Dashlane. So core teams will have their own. For instance, we have a core team around autofill. That core team, they have their own roadmap that serves the company OKRs and that serves the company strategy with their own sets of metrics and so on.
And the company OKRs are defined once per year, and then you have quarterly OKRs in the teams, or?
Yeah, we have yearly company OKRs. Sometimes we revisit them in the middle of the year, but they're mostly like for the year. And then it cascades into quarterly OKRs for most teams. Depends on we have, after many years of using OKRs, we've actually being more flexible with the OKR framework today. And so teams will use OKR in their own flavor, depending on their needs and their typologies. Some teams won't use OKR if they don't think it fits with them. And so that's we have a pretty lightweight approach today to OKRs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, OKRs is it seems to be such a mighty thing in a way, but it is a lightweight approach if you do it right. But how do you make sure? I mean, I've worked in companies that introduced OKRs, and then you had that OKR alignment week somewhere between the quarters starting, and you had there was heavy lifting done in the background, and then the quarter started, and no one spoke about OKRs for a few months, and then shortly before the next OKR alignment week, people suddenly rushed around and tried to close down a lot of construction sites. How do you make sure that OKRs are really connected to your roadmap and to the actual, let's say, issues and stories on your product roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, we did the same in the past. We used to have like those weekly, bi-weekly, monthly alignment, and in the end, it was not that efficient. There was a lot of overhead, and it made the OKR process way too cumbersome. So we've kind of we don't do it that much anymore. We do company OKRs to give context to the whole organization about what we expect. But then we give quite a lot of autonomy to the team to decide, okay, how are they going to serve this? And the alignment is actually done not because we have a deep alignment across the whole organization. It's more like done by capillarity, if that makes sense. Meaning, of course, a core team doesn't work in isolation. There is a review that's being done at the product level and at the product engineering level. So we are, in a sense, making sure the CPU and the CTO that whatever they're doing fits the strategy, and then we tie things back like one-on-one and step by step across the whole ladder tying up to the OKR, but there's not like a big alignment stuff. So whenever the team comes and say, okay, we think we're going to do that, there's a feedback loop discussions happening. Okay, does that make sense? Does it fit the overall strategy? Yes and no. Yes, you can do it, and no, let's discuss. That's mostly what it is.
And is there any grading happening? I mean, do you then also revisit the company OKRs by the end of the year, and then, I don't know, check how successful you've been, or?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we as part of OKR, you have the KRs, which are the metrics. So we do have data that we track and that we make sure we're going the right direction, and we evaluate whether we're successful or not. At the company level, obviously, it's more like business-oriented metrics. Even though, for instance, this year we had things around efficiency of the quality and efficiency for the engineering team. But it depends. So when you're deep in the team, you're going to have very granular metrics that are related to what the team is working on. So I was mentioning, for instance, that autofill team. Of course, they're going to have things that are metrics that are related to the autofill metrics and how the customers use Dashlane and so on. And those are going to tie back into NPS and tie back into store ratings, and they're going to tie back into business and revenues and how much we sell and so on. So that's a bit how it is.
Sounds quite lean. And how many objectives do you set per year?
Always too many. But for instance, if I think about 2021, we had 3 O's for the company and 2 KR each. So we had 6. I think we added one more at some point, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, really
But then when you
interesting.
cascade it multiplies, and that's the problem.
Yeah, obviously, and then it gets a problem if like a team has 10 different O's. Obviously.
No, exactly.
What are your recent top 3 learnings around team structure and organizations and agile processes? Because you went through quite a lot of different phases, as far as I've seen. I saw a nice talk recommended to everyone, Half-Baked Agility by yourself on YouTube. What are your top 3 learnings, if you could say that? Like those are the 3 takeaways that like really surprised me in the last year.
I don't think they're going to be so surprising, but one thing that is really important in my mind is try not to do too many things in parallel. As a startup, that's always a big risk. We have too many ambitions. We want to do too many things at the same time. And at the end of the day, you dilute the focus and you dilute the results. So I'm always trying to make sure that we have fewer priorities, like fewer top priorities, stronger focus, and less peanut buttering the people on too many things, because then at the end of the day, you don't achieve anything. And that's super hard because, of course, there's always a lot of pressure to do more and to do more in parallel and so on. But that's something we've been working a lot, and that's been a big challenge at Dashlane. Like, okay, let's make sure that there is a stability and focus for the teams, so that they can work in the long term on the one key top priority, and that we don't pile up things and initiatives and projects they need to do, and then at the end of the day, they fail all of them. So it's probably not very surprising, but so much of a challenge for an organization like ours.
Okay, yeah, that's really not surprising, but I also think it's always a good reminder to every once in a while look at, right?
Oh yeah. And by the way, it has a lot of, if I think about engineering, it has a lot of side implications, because of course, if people don't have the right context, then they're going to be not providing the right value. If they don't have the right clarity and context on the priorities, they're going to be frustrated because they're working on something that might not be the top priority. If you change a strategy too much, if you do too much strategy whiplash, then we have a lot of inefficiencies in the organization. So, I mean, yet again, a focus and simplicity and clarity is like at the heart of everything. And then you have good people, you hired good people, you have hired the right one. They're happy to be part of that adventure, and they're going to do their best work if you provide this. But it's way more complicated to do actually than it seems to be.
Yeah, it's always more complicated. So if we could now go back into the year 2001, when you've been working at IBM as a project manager, just finishing your studies, and you now had the chance to whisper something into your young self ears, what would it be?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. The first learning I got out of IBM, and that's going to be a bit maybe depressing as a learning, was that you always work for people, you don't work for a company. And IBM was a big machine at the time, and I was in the consulting group, and we were really like kind of considered like meat being sold out there to customers and so on. And I did learn a lot at the time, and I enjoyed my days. But from a spirit standpoint, yeah, that was a big learning that, okay, you work for people, and those are the people that you're going to follow in your life and your career. And that's the human relationship is what matters. And the company is more of an envelope around all this, but you don't work for the company, you work for the people that are part of the company. And so that's why the team is so important. That's why who you hire, who you work with is so important. No matter what project you're working on, you are like joking about the fact that I moved from online gambling to task management. But what did matter to me in both experience was the people I was working with, and the people also as a CTO I could help grow in their own life and in their own career. And that's what I think that's the key. And at some point in online gambling, I was part of BetClick. I didn't feel the connection anymore with what the organization was trying to achieve, and the connection with the people that were around me. That's why I decided to leave. And that's something that's an important learning when you start your career, I think.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Frédéric. Yeah, it was really interesting talk. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope, or fingers crossed for your move to New York.
Thank you very much.
I'll visit you there at a certain time.
Be my guest.
Great, and yeah, let's see how you come to Or when you're going to be a unicorn or way above unicorn? I guess you already are. How your journey progresses. Thanks a lot.
Yes, Dashlane is a very interesting journey. And I encourage all the people who are listening to use a password manager if they're not, because that's really critical in today's world for your digital hygiene, in a sense.
Thanks a lot, Frédéric.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.